For more now from Mark Voyger, a senior fellow with CEPA and director of the master's program in global management, American University Kyiv. He joins us live from Warsaw. Thank you for being with us on the program, sir. Now, I want to get your assessment on Ukraine's usage of these cluster bombs and how Russia's potential retaliatory response could be on the battlefield.
Good morning, Efnan. Thank you for having me. First of all, the decision has been dubbed controversial, but if you line up all the facts and put them in the right context, it becomes less controversial. To begin with, calling these munitions cluster bombs is inaccurate. They're not dispersed by means of airplanes. I mean, the Ukraine doesn't have the air force assets sufficient to actually deploy such munitions, even if they were in the form of bombs, and they're not. These are artillery shells for the 155 millimeter howitzers, which many NATO nations have already provided to Ukraine, and they are considered precision weapons, precision munitions. They consist of 88 bomblets or submunitions dispersed, in a very in a very efficient manner. And by the way, these ammunitions, which the U.S. is supplying, and are based on an improved ordnance, improved type of artillery shells, which have a failure rate or a dud rate of less than 0.5%.
So why do you think the U.S. is receiving so much criticism from its NATO counterparts in providing these bombs, ammunition to Ukraine?
Of course, the concern is always about civilians, and also there is this international legal regime, to which many of the NATO nations are signatories. The U.S. is not. Ukraine is not. Ukraine, as a sovereign nation, has requested to use from the U.S. Such munitions to be used in its territory in a very responsible way in areas which are not densely populated by civilians. By the way, the first use of such cluster munitions was by Russia on February 28th against Kharkov. It's well documented. There is a video of Russia just destroying an entire neighborhood in the center of Kharkov using cluster munitions, and these are Soviet munitions with a failure rate of almost 30%.
Right.
So in this case, the American munitions are much safer. They have a dud rate of about 1%, between 1 and 2. And then there will be an extensive demining program after the war, because these areas have been heavily contaminated by Russian minefields anyway, and by artillery and other unexploded ordnance.
So
so this will be subsumed in that process.
Right. So another major issue is, of course, the grain deal that's been spoken about for the last couple of days, which now threatens global food security and the prospects of taking that step forward to bringing stability to the region. Russia wants sanctions lifted on its fertilizers and on its wheat. Could we see that happen?
What Russia is doing is another blatant example of its modus operandi of weaponizing food security, effectively blackmailing the entire world, especially the so-called global south, where most of the exports from Ukraine go, especially the grain. They are threatening to really turn the Black Sea into a Russia lake. They cannot be allowed to do that. These threats should not be allowed to stand. There should be a firm international reaction, both by NATO, by the EU, and the literal states of the Black Sea, many of which are actually NATO members. If Russia is allowed to continue with these acts effectively, they will seal off a large portion of the Black Sea. They'll turn it into a Russia lake, and this will jeopardize not only the security of the social economic security of the global south, but also ultimately of the West, should famines erupt across this vast region. So this is extremely irresponsible behavior on the part of Russia, and it shouldn't be allowed to stand.
All right, Mark Voyger, thank you so much for being with us here on the NewsHour and sharing that analysis with us. We really appreciate it.